What's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another discussion video. Today we're talking about The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, the remake, and the value of this game that we literally don't know too much about outside of it's a remake. But I wanted to talk about this because there was some articles and I was kind of roped into a discussion yesterday via Twitter, which I talked about on my PE Live. But if you missed it, that's why I've got this discussion video that I'm doing right now. But there was also an article on Nintendo Live talking about whether if this game, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, the remake for the Switch, is worth $60. And I find that to be weird to be asking if it's worth $60 at this point, because one, it's just subjective, right? I mean, is it worth $60? Well, it might not be worth $60 to everyone, and there's no standard set by, okay, this game is worth $60 because of this. This game is worth $60 because of this. It's all based off of your subjective opinion on it. But even if you wanted to go to some type of imaginary standard, obviously, because that's why there are even these discussions in the first place, as in like you need X, Y, or Z in order for a game to be worth this price. Let's talk about that just a little bit more. So if we're looking at a game, what would be the reason why a game would be worth $60, right? I would think it would be content. Now, for everybody else, that's not exactly the case. Some people really need graphics to be there. The graphics got to be a certain level. I'm not sure what level it needs to be at for everyone, but there needs to be a certain level for a game in terms of graphics for it to be worth 60. And that's where I kind of like split and veer off, right? I paid 60 bucks for Bloodstained Ritual Tonight because I felt it was worth $60. And even back before the graphics were even brushed up more, the game wasn't looking as good. If you go back and look at like the first demo and even before then, just what they were showing off, it was not looking as good. So I was confident in the actual content and value and the creators of the game to say, okay, for me, this is worth 60 bucks on my Xbox One at the time. I backed it pretty much the day one that you can back it. I did $60 so I can get a physical edition of the game, or at some point I think I upped my pledge. But either way, I felt that it was worth the $60, and the graphics obviously aren't as good as some of the modern games. The mechanics in the game aren't supposed to be as modern as what we're seeing at this point. It's an old school type of game. So I think that it's really subjective, but even if you look at it for me, because I can only really speak on my own thought process on this, I've always felt that the content in the game is where the value comes from, not necessarily the look of the game, because there's going to be games that focus way more on graphics and less on content. And while you have a nice, pretty game and everything is looking really good, there's not really much substance to that game at all, which we've seen before, right? For example, The Order 1886. That game had really great graphics, some of the best graphics ever, but there wasn't really a lot of content in there. There wasn't really a lot of replay value and stuff that you can do. There was no multiplayer. So is that game worth $60 because of how it looks, because it runs at a certain resolution, or because it's this or it's that? I wouldn't say that it is. Also, you have to look at it in terms of like time and value, right? Like how much time are you going to put into this game, which comes with the content? So to me, it's kind of funny to see already people saying, oh, well, it's not worth this because of how it looks, when we don't even know the content in the game. We know that it's a remake of the original, but usually with these type of things, a lot of the times developers will add in a lot of stuff that they didn't have before. Pretty much every single remake that I can think of that Nintendo does, they usually add in stuff there. So even if you felt that, oh, well, it's just the Game Boy game, right? They might have some stuff added in, and that's why I want to wait and see, even if I'm looking at it objectively and not the way that I was talking about before with content and all that stuff like that. It's usually a good thing to wait and see what they've added in. If the game adds in a bunch of extra stuff, there's hours upon hours and upon hours of replay value in content, then maybe it's going to be worth that 60 for some people, objectively speaking. Maybe it's not going to be worth the 60, but I feel that the best course of action is to kind of wait and see the value of the game overall once Nintendo starts talking about what's inside the game. Because even if you look back at what Nintendo's done, I mean, obviously this is weird because like Nintendo charged 60 bucks for ports of Wii U games and 2D games. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is a full remake. It's not just a port, but it's a full remake redone from the ground up for the Nintendo Switch. And we've got ports that were going for 60. You know, we've seen lots of them. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze was actually $10 more than what it was on the Wii U, and they added Funky Kong, you know, so they didn't really add a lot to what you can do in that game, and they charged 60, and over 2 million people, more people than what bought it on the Wii U, bought Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze because they felt that the game was good enough, and maybe they probably haven't played it, or they felt that the value being able to play the game anywhere that they want was important to them, so they went out there and bought it. So to them, it was worth that 60. So it's always interesting to hear people say, oh, well, this isn't worth this, or this isn't worth that. How can it be worth it before the game even comes out? Or it's even a question. I think we should at least just wait till we see what's in the game first. But this topic matter is ridiculously subjective, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, this PlayStation 4, this game, this Xbox One game, this Switch game, it's worth full price to you, or it's worth full price to me. And I'm like, well, how is it worth full price to me? Because I know good and well that PS4, Xbox One games, a lot of third-party games in general, go down in price very quickly. If you wait 2 months, or if you wait 3 months, you could get the game cheaper. And I already have a ton of games to play anyway. And if you're looking at it in pretty much any other industry, right? Like if you're looking at buying a car, and if you knew that that car was going to go down in price, let's say a month later or 2 months later, would you buy that car like right away if you didn't need to have it right away? Probably not. And if you knew that the price was going to go down by 50% or 30% or whatever the case is, or a house, if you knew that it was going to go down, would you buy that right then and there? Probably not if you didn't actually need it. Now, if it's something of need, then okay, I get that. A lot of times with Nintendo first-party games, they hold their value pretty well, and there's times where like it's like a year later and it's still 60 bucks, or 2 years later, or whatever the case is. But either way, basically what I'm trying to say here is that it's really subjective for the content matter when it comes to what something is worth, you know, 60 bucks, or if it's not worth it. It's all dependent on the content in the game if we're speaking about objectively, right? At least back when I was a kid, I used to always say like, okay, well, am I gonna buy this game? I would go through the review and be like, how many hours is it? Because I already know if I look at the game, I see the gameplay, I see the features, I'm like, okay, that's cool. It looks like a game that I'm gonna like, but how long is the game? Is the game gonna get me my money's worth? That's how I always figured that value was put into games, especially back when I didn't have a lot of money for games and I didn't get games like review codes and all of that. Basically, I would say, okay, well, I need to spend my money on the game. I don't have a lot of money. What am I going to buy here? And it had to be a game that was like 15, 20 hours plus. I only had to buy games like that because I needed the games to last, because I would just go through and always beat all my games because I didn't have as many games to play and I had a lot more time back then. So that's how it was for me. But it seems like in today's day, that's not necessarily the case. A game can look a certain way, or it's in this resolution, and even if it has way less hours, it can be more valuable than a game that maybe doesn't look as good and has way more hours in content. Or at least I think that's the reason why that we're even talking about this in the first place, because it's only based on the graphical look. It's not based on the actual content. It's not based on the full product just yet, but it's an interesting discussion nonetheless, and I found it interesting to read the articles and see what other people were saying. I mean, it's one of those topics that I didn't really touch on because I didn't really think it was a point of discussion, because it's a full remake. Nintendo charges 60 bucks for ports of Wii U games that aren't full remakes. You know, this game is fully rendered in 3D. It's a 2.5D game. It's not completely 2D. Some people are calling it just 2D, which I get that, but it's completely rendered in 3D when it comes to Link's model and when it comes to the enemies and stuff like that. But you walk around, it's kind of like 2.5D type of deal. But I mean, like, I think that's really where it's coming from. It's only because of the look of the game. We'll have to wait and see once the full product does come out, like I've stated, whether they add in a lot of stuff or not, and then you can kind of make your own determination. But it's really subjective. I mean, that's the thing about this topic, is that it's super subjective. I mean, anybody could be thinking pretty much anything when it comes to that, when it comes to what they value in games more so than other games. Some people really value online multiplayer in games, right? And that's the reason why they're gonna go out there and buy this game if it has online multiplayer. But the single player can be completely trash. It could be like no single player whatsoever, and this game is worth 60 bucks. Where there could be the other way around for some people. It's like, okay, well, single player is really why I want to buy this game, and I need value in the single player, and the multiplayer isn't that big of a deal for me because I'm not big on multiplayer. So it's so weird that this is even being brought up like this, especially before the game has even launched and we even know more about it. I mean, we don't even have a date for the game outside of just 2019. Nintendo still doesn't even have that for us. So to me, it's one of those wait and see things. games, see how things turn out, see what's added in. I know I'm going to pick it up just because I'm intrigued. I remember playing Link's Awakening back on my Game Boy Color and not really liking it that much. So I'm thinking maybe it was just because it was on the Game Boy Color. I was playing Pokemon at the time. I just felt that Pokemon was a lot better, and I think that Pokemon will probably be better for me at least. I know I like RPGs more, but I want to try it out again on the TV and be able to play it in not a Game Boy Color, because, you know, the Game Boy Color is a bit rough when it comes to it, and there was no backlight on there, so you can only play it at certain angles, sunlight. You guys know how it is, the struggle with the Game Boy Color at times. So for me, I want to play it in an atmosphere that's going to be a lot better, and obviously the Switch is going to provide that atmosphere for this game to really shine. It's a complete remake, so I'll kind of evaluate it when I get the game later this year, whenever it does come out. So what do you guys think about this whole discussion? I know I talked about it on my PE Live. A lot of you guys had interesting topics and discussions to go over. My end result, just so we can make sure that we're clear on this, is that it's subjective. It can be worth this price to you, it could not be worth that price, but for every person it's different based on the game itself, based on what you like, what you don't like, which we didn't even talk about in terms of personal preference and what styles of games that you like, and if it's worth that price based on that. I was just thinking that, okay, if you do like this game, but there's even that aspect to throw in there. How much do you like adventure games to see if a game is worth X or Y price, you know? So there's even that, but I didn't talk about that. But there's just so much to get into when it comes to this. It would take forever to go over everything because of how subjective this whole topic matter is in the first place. So what do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, ninjas, that wraps it up for this video here. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Really helps us spread the content of PlayerEssence across the internet and just to YouTube. Also, make sure you check out our Patreon, Twitch, and YouTube live gaming pages. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let you know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for the latest RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next video. Peace.